Now I continue in 1 Timothy chapter number 3 and verse number 4. When I left the radio last week, I should say, we were dealing with this matter of ruling well his own house. Paul states, this is the 14th qualification of the bishop, one that ruleth well his own house. Today we'll move a step further, having his children in subjection with all gravity. Having his children in subjection with all gravity. Now, I pointed out on the program on Thursday and Friday the matter of ruling his own house. I think that is more than just the area of child rearing. Now, the matter of child rearing cannot be divorced from this. You can tell much about a man, a father. You can tell much about what he is and also about what he is not by looking and observing his family and observing his children. His children will become a reflection of who the man is. But I wouldn't say that a man would be disqualified whose children became wayward. You can't control what your adult children do. My daughter is 31 years old. My son will soon be 28. And they're adults in their own right. And I have no control over their lives. At this point, what I invested in them as children, I've got to trust the Lord and trust my investment in them as small children to keep them on the straight and narrow way. I think that has much to do with training up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from that. I don't think that means that children, if you train up children in church and in Sunday school, that they'll never get out of church and never live a life of sin. What you put in them, they'll never get away from it. They may not agree with it. But I would imagine if you went in the average pool hall and beer joint, nightclub, and asked some of the men in that joint, what would your mother say about you being here? I'm sure that you'd find some of them that'd hang their head in shame and would say, my mother'd never be found in a place like this. My mother wouldn't come in a place like this. My mother'd be ashamed if she knew I was here. I think that's what that means in Proverbs. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. He can't get away from how he was raised. Now, he may kick against the pricks. I think that's part of the problem we've been facing in the United States this year with Antifa and the Black Lives Matter communist movement and all the other manifestations of anarchy and rebellion, is they did not like to retain God in their knowledge. If they were godless, then why would they not want to retain God in their knowledge? They're trying to get away from the things that have been instilled in them. They're trying to reject the things they know to be in them. A man that rules well his own house is a man that has his affairs in order. He has his household duties and his household affairs in order. A man that won't pay his bills. I just don't think that man would be qualified to pastor a local church. If he won't pay his own bills, how can he, if he won't rule his own house well, how can he be expected to rule the household of God? But now the matter of children does come up in the text, and it's not possible to entirely divorce the matter of children and child rearing from the qualification of the bishop. Verse 4 says, one that ruleth well his own house. An evidence of that, or an outworking of that, is having his children in subjection with all gravity. Now, there comes a point in time when a man's children will not be in subjection to him. I appreciate my son. I certainly do. But my son is not a 16-year-old boy. He's a grown, married man with his own home, his own responsibilities, his own wife. And when I talk to my son, I don't talk to him like he's a 16-year-old boy. I talk to my son like I would address any other adult man. Now, I don't have any control over my son's life. I hope what I've instilled in him will manifest itself. And the older he gets, the more he'll hearken back to his childhood. Dad said this, Dad said that. Same with my daughter. My daughter's 31 years old. I don't address my daughter as though she's a 10-year-old girl. She's certainly not. I address my daughter as I would address any other adult woman. She is my daughter, no doubt about it. But she also is an adult woman. The matter of having his children in subjection with all gravity would have to be a reference to the children being small and being in the home. There comes a point in time, and it's in different places with different people, 18, 19, 20 years old, 21 years old, when young men need to leave home. I mean, it's time for them to go. They need to go get out on their own and establish their own home. The old saying is, no house is big enough for two women. There comes a point in time when daughters, it's time for them to marry. It's time for them to establish their own home. It's time for them to have a husband. It's time for them to bear children and for them to guide their home. Having his children in subjection would have to be a reference to children that are still in the homes, children that are still in subjection, adolescent children, children that are not able to live on their own, children that are not able to be on their own, that are not recognized as adults. The word having his children in subjection. The word having simply means to possess or to hold in power. To be able to hold something like you would hold something in your hand. It means to contain something or to receive something. Having his children in subjection. Now, this is one of the qualifications of the pastor, and a bishop that does not have his children in this matter of subjection would become disqualified at this point. His marriage may be good, and he may fall into some other areas where he would qualify. But the text says a bishop then must be blameless, must be the husband of one wife, and in the light of the context, must have his children in subjection. This word subjection carries the idea of a state of being under the power or under the control of. A father, a bishop, must have his children. We're not talking about adult children. I'm not talking about grown men, 20, 30, 40 years of age. I'm talking about children, small children, primary children, elementary age children, middle school children. Having his children under his power or under his control. Now, the next verse states, as an illustration, that if a man know not how to rule his own house, how shall he take care of the church of God? So a man that isn't disciplined enough to rule his own house, to pay his bills on time, to mow his lawn, to if a pastoral candidate was candidating to pastor a church, and I went to his house and the paint was peeling off the boxing, the grass in the front yard was knee deep, and the trash in the house hadn't been carried out. Instead of taking the trash out, we just get a bigger trash can. I would certainly not entertain a vote for that man to pastor my church. Because if he can't rule his own house, how in the world is he ever going to take care of the local assembly? And part of the care of the local assembly is keeping the buildings and the grounds, the Sunday school classrooms and the auditorium and the carpet on the floors and the bathrooms and the offices, keeping them all in a good state of cleanliness and a good state of repair. Well, now, an outgrowth of what that man is will be reflected in his children. And if he shows up to preach a candidating sermon, and his children haven't been bathed for days, or his children are utterly out of control, running and romping, screaming and hollering, and trying to run herd on this family of children, I promise you, that man does not have his children in subjection. They are not under his power. Now again, I'm not talking about adult children. And many preachers have children that don't go to church like they ought to go. And they were raised in church and raised in Sunday school. And all of us have problems that arise and difficulties that arise. I'm not talking about adult children. I'm talking about Junior that's 3 years old or Junior that's 5 years old. If I saw a young man wanting to pastor a church and his little 3-year-old sassed back at him or slapped at his wife, and that little child did that without being corrected, I'm talking about having their bottom warmed up. My children did not talk back to my wife. They weren't going to talk back to me either, but they certainly were not going to talk back to my wife. They were not going to strike at my wife. They would rue the day they did that. Those little children, little terrorists running around, rugrats and crumb crunchers, being completely out of control, that man is disqualified. 1 Timothy 3 and verse number 4. That man's not qualified to be a bishop. I didn't say he wasn't qualified to be a preacher. I said he's not qualified to pastor a church. Then this matter of gravity. And my time is getting out from under me. I'll tell you tomorrow, I'll probably just have to pick up with this matter of gravity. But in this matter of subjection, when a father recognizes the importance of having his children in subjection, there is a safety that is involved in this. I want my children, when they're small, to stop when I say stop. You see, they don't see the danger. They don't perceive the danger that I perceive. They don't understand the things I understand. They have no concept that a 2-ton automobile running 55 miles an hour down the country road will strike them and kill them. They don't understand that at all. If their ball darts out in the road, they go after the ball. It doesn't enter into their mind that a car could come along and kill me. That's a responsibility of father, to have his children trained in such a way that when he says stop, they'll stop. Because sometimes there's not time to explain why. There's only time to obey. Now I'll continue with this on the program tomorrow.
Greenville, South Carolina 29602. This is Mark Ferguson inviting